and welcome to the Seahawks360 podcast. I'm your host, Candace Higgins, and as always, you know, it's a pleasure and a privilege to talk Hawks with you. We are 1 week away from NFL action as I speak today, and there's been a lot of things happening, some ins and outs, but most importantly, we are nearing the official start of the football season, and I am ready. I don't know about you guys, but we have to talk about the 53-man roster cut down. We have to talk about, of course, we're going to touch on a little bit Russell Wilson's extension. But most importantly, what I want to talk about today is 12 bold takes to go into this upcoming year for the Seahawks. There's a lot of naysayers, a lot of people who doubt the Seahawks. I'm optimistic, and I know some of the takes I'm going to do today are bold, but I want to get you guys excited for this NFL season. So let's get into it and talk some Hawks. Alrighty. So to start this thing off, I'm going to talk about a subject that isn't really directly related to the Seattle Seahawks, but I understand why a lot of Seahawks fans are invested in this, and that is the extension of former quarterback Russell Wilson. He officially agreed to a 5-year, $245 million contract extension that will average out having him at $49 million a year. Now, I will say while that sounds like an astronomical number, I really don't think it was that astronomical. I think it's with probably around what his value is, at least relative to his good performance. And as we know, last year he was injured. But if you look at the overall quarterback that he's been, he did not reset the market in any sort of way. Sure, he's in the line with the top paid quarterbacks, but I think that's naturally to be expected whenever you're up for a contract extension. And I won't go as far to say that it's team friendly, but I do find it interesting that he was willing to restructure his contract in a way that I think does in some ways benefits the team. If you look at the breakdown of his contract, his cap hit for 2022 is $17 million. For 2023, it's $22 million. For 2024, it's $34.4 million. And then it goes up from there. I think it goes up to $55 million in 2025 and $58.4 million in 2026, which he likely won't see the life of the contract for that anyway. Really, by the time he hits 2025, there's some kind of, generally speaking, I don't know. With his age, maybe there's not going to be a restructure, but few quarterback contracts see the full life of the contract, and maybe he'll be the exception, but it's my guess that the team is looking to do other things at that point. And really, when you look at how big the cap is, how much the cap is going to go up, I really don't think this is an unreasonable contract. It's something I'd even think that John Snyder and Pete Carroll would have been amenable to had Russell been interested in an extension, which he was not. And that's one thing that he does not deny, is that he was not interested in signing an extension with the Seattle Seahawks. So ultimately, John Snyder moved on. It'll be interesting to see how this contract ages more than anything else. I think that's the only really intriguing storyline to me is, does he age well? Is he able to be similar to the Tom Brady's? Or is he more like a Phillip Rivers who aged poorly, or Ben Roethlisberger who aged poorly? His arm talent is still there. He's obviously lost a lot of his athleticism. Does that affect his game? Is he able to work around that? Is he able to sort of restructure his game as he gets older to still be an effective quarterback? Are all questions to look out for. But honestly, I kind of wish he would have taken, something more team-friendly like that on his last deal. I don't really know what goes into that. Maybe it's the fact that he's older now and he's just feeling the urgency to, get the Super Bowl ring that he's rightfully been searching for years. That hasn't happened. Some of it's on him. Some will argue. Others will argue not so much. We'll see. But this does put his team in a position, I think, to succeed or to build a team around him that can help him get there. He did an interview talking about how that was a priority. He cared more about the Super Bowl rings. And I don't think that was the case when he was in Seattle. It would have, I mean, he cared about the Super Bowl rings, but he also wanted to get paid. I think he's gotten so much money at this point that that's not the priority. And like I said, wish Seattle would have been able to see some of the benefits of that. I wish he would have been able to see some of the benefits of what that would have looked like in Seattle. But I understand that John Snyder and Pete Carroll haven't been the best when it comes to personnel decisions. So I understand why that wasn't necessarily a risk he'd be willing to take. That's pretty much all I got on the Russell situation. He's not a Seahawk anymore, and while I understand the connection that will always be there, the watching how Seattle does versus watching how Russell does with the Broncos will be a forever extending storyline, but it's just not something that I'm interested in spending too much time about. He's not on the team. I want to talk Seahawks. So, let's talk about this 53-man roster. Your Seattle Seahawks officially made their cut down at the deadline on Tuesday. And I just want to give my overall thoughts. I'm not going to go through the whole roster. That's a little pointless. If you wanted to see my initial projections, you are more than welcome to check out our page at 12's Seahawks on Twitter, and you will see my post. I had a spreadsheet of how I anticipated the roster would go. I got some things wrong. I got some things right, as these things tend to go. Hardly ever does anybody fully guess the 53-man roster. But I just want to make a couple of notes. One thing that I think is glaringly obvious is how thin the roster is at linebacker. If you're not familiar right now, the only linebackers that they have on the active roster are Jordan Brooks, Cody Barton, and Nick Bellore, who we all know is just an emergency backup. He's not really a linebacker. He is just not at this age. He's more of a special teamer at this point, and that's really the value that he brings to the team. And they did not even pick up anybody on waivers, really. They did get an edge rusher, but not an inside linebacker. So their inside linebacker depth, like I said, it's razor thin. To me, though, I think that just speaks to how little they plan on playing the linebacker position. And really, if you think about it, big picture, this is Seahawks 360, and we look at things from every angle. If you look at a big picture, last year and the year before, when Ken Norton Jr. was the defensive coordinator, that is, there was more emphasis on the linebackers. KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner were some of the best players on the defense all around at that point. And I just think that philosophy has changed, where while Jordan Brooks is still a quality linebacker, I don't think that Cody Barton is, but Jordan Brooks is a reliable linebacker. The talent and the depth on this team is really in the secondary, from the safety duo that they have to Josh Jones, who's come on in training camp, Ryan Neal, who we know is a reliable backup safety, and the cornerback depth. Sidney Jones, how well he ended the year last year, Artie Burns being a good fit in this system at least. And then you've got two very talented rookies with high upside behind those guys, not to mention your second year Trey Brown, who hasn't even had a chance to get on the field yet, but showed great promise in the few games he played in his rookie year. So I think it's really just going towards the personnel and not forcing the issue. I don't think they intend to have more than one linebacker on the field. To me, that just says they're going to do a lot of 3-4 safety packages, a lot of big dime packages, nickel packages. They're not going to do a whole lot of, 2 linebacker on the field situations. I don't think. I think you will see Jordan Brooks on the field if there's a linebacker needed. But I think that it's not going to look like it did last year in that regard. And the logic behind doing that is because linebackers tend to struggle in coverage a lot of the times. And sometimes at least in the modern NFL, sometimes the best wide receivers in the game are slot wide receivers. And so having a guy who's not good at coverage in the middle of the field like that could sometimes be an open exposure. The Seattle Seahawks had a lot of situations where you had good, fast wide receivers end up on a linebacker, and then it lead to an explosive play. And we all know when it comes on the defensive side, Pete Carroll does not want explosive plays given up. And that was a big way how teams were just, set it up that way. It wasn't hard to get a lot to make sure you had a linebacker matched on one of your fast wide receivers for a big play. So you take one of those linebackers off the field, you replace it with a safety who will be better in coverage, and that decreases some of your liabilities, and it gives you a little bit more versatility in terms of schematically. I think that's where they're going. And I think that's why they're comfortable with the numbers they have. It would still make me feel better to have somebody better than Nick Bellore under Cody Barton. But I think there must be counting on Jordan Brooks to be healthy for a good portion of the year, to take majority of those snaps, to relieve Jordan Brooks, Cody Barton. But I think more than anything, you're going to see a lot of Jamal Adams in the box. You're going to see maybe Ryan Neal in the box. And I think that'll be more common than anything else, so they're not worried about that. Okay, moving on. Notable cuts were Freddie Swain and Marquise Blair, two people who I thought were on the edge of the roster anyway. And I was actually, you never want to see a guy lose their jobs, but I think that was the absolute right thing for the team to move on from those players. Freddie Swain hadn't shown much of anything in his time. He is really more of a guy who's benefited from busted coverages more than anything else. Freddie Swain hasn't made an impressive contested catch. Freddie Swain hasn't made an explosive play on his own. He's not a playmaker. That's not what he's shown. And I think you've got more of that in a Bo Melton or a Derek Young. Bo Melton did not make the team either, but a Derek Young with his size and playmaking ability, you've got a lot more of that than anything that Freddie Swain could have given you, especially if he's not even going to be reliable from a pass catching perspective. A wide receiver who can't catch. What is that? Really? What is that? And it wasn't just Freddie Swain. The whole team struggled, but you can understand it better when you're dealing with drops with a Derek Young or a Bo Melton, who are rookies from smaller, lower division schools and smaller schools. You understand it more. Freddie Swain had been in this league for 3 years and he regressed completely. I think he looked the worst he's ever looked. So rightfully, the Seahawks decided to move on. I think he signed to the Dolphins practice squad, which also just shows the level of player that he's at, right now. Really more of a practice squad kind of guy. I would agree. Marquise Blair was also cut. Now, I thought they'd keep him around just because of his draft talent, but I didn't think he deserved to be on this roster at all. I did think that he wouldn't make it. He just had so many missed tackles, and I just think they're frustrated with the mental mistakes with Marquise Blair. At some point, yes, somebody's talented, but they can't get the fundamentals down. How can you put them out on the field? How can you have the trust in them that they're going to do what they need to do? You got to wrap up when you're tackling guys, and Marquise Blair just continues to make those same mistakes, head hunting when he's making tackles, not using his arms, not wrapping up these guys. And it's critical mistakes that are costly for the entire defense. So it was too much of that. He lost his job, especially given that he wasn't as versatile anymore. They pretty much took him out of the slot, the nickel cornerback space. He was no longer competing for that. So he didn't have a place on this roster. Joey Blunt, actually undrafted, Joey Blunt beat him out. He played better. He made less mistakes. And, competition wins. You want to see, at least I want to see, this team, they want to compete. Let the competition win. Let the best man win out. And win it all out. And I think that's exactly what they chose to do right here. Now, speaking of competitions, I think it was clear that Myles Adams had completely beat out LJ Collier, and it wasn't close. Not just because LJ Collier had been injured for a good portion of the offseason, but just because LJ Collier hadn't produced anything in the NFL to his time yet. And so Myles Adams had basically more sacks in the preseason than LJ Collier basically had in his whole NFL career. So it was interesting to me that they decided to keep LJ Collier, who just keeps lingering on this roster. I don't understand why they keep him on this roster. They did end up stashing him on injury reserve. My thinking is that they're hoping that, by the time he gets healthy, maybe somebody else is banged up and they see what he's got, give him a shot in this new defense. But man, sometimes you just gotta let the dream die. Sometimes you just got to do that, and that's what I feel like they should do. I don't think they'll do it. Obviously, they did not do it. He's going to stick around. They keep finding reasons to keep him around. But this is it for him. I mean, he's not going to be on the team next year. They're not going to re-sign him to another contract. They better not re-sign him to another contract. So it is what it is. I mean, he's not technically taking up a roster spot, so I'm not going to trip over it. But I just find it interesting that they just can't get over this guy. I don't understand why they want to prove so bad that he wasn't a bust. Sometimes, like Marquise Blair, you just got to cut bait. But whatever. I did anticipate that they were going to keep Derek Young over Bo Melton. I just think that it's about the measurables. The measurables of Derek Young, his size, his speed, what he offers, the full package of playmaking. I just think that's more intriguing for other teams, and I think it just came down to who they thought they could sneak off the roster, because both of them had drop issues, and I think both of them, showed promise as well. They both had some plays that they made, and they both had some plays that they did not make. Like I said, Bo Melton, I just think was easier to sneak on the practice squad. They were able to claim him back and get him back on the practice squad. So I think that was a logic there. I think it was the right logic. It's exactly what I would have done myself. And finally, the other notable thing that I just want to mention is that Justin Coleman, there's a question mark there. Justin Coleman was originally cut from the 53-man roster, but they did bring him back, basically not to avoid paying his guaranteed salary. I find that interesting because when they cut him, I thought that maybe that meant that Kobe Bryant would be the starting nickel. And now I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure if they're going to have him starting at nickel. If they brought back Justin Coleman, does he get that spot? Is it that Kobe truly won the competition, but they want the depth without the guaranteed contract? Or do they just feel like they didn't want to pay the guaranteed money, and so they felt comfortable going with Kobe, even though they prefer to start Coleman? That'll be interesting. I don't think we'll really know until game day, or maybe unless somebody asks about it from the media. But I don't think we'll know till game day what they're thinking right there. I don't even know if they'll give that indication one way or the other. But that's something that I'm interested to find out. I was really excited to see Kobe Bryant, in week one starting, but I can understand why, just even if it's nothing else, but for week one, they want some veterans there. Don't want Russ to take advantage of some of the young players. And, Kobe did not have a good showing in his final preseason game, so there's reason to believe that he's not quite ready, even though I was excited to see it. So those are pretty much all my thoughts on the 53-man roster, guys. It's not a ton to get into. It's really, I think a lot of it was pretty straightforward. Of course, rosters are always fluid, ever-flowing. Things can change. People come and go. So we'll see what ends up happening. But that's all I got. So let's get started with what I know I've been waiting for. And that is my 12 bold takes for the 12's. Now, the way this is going to work, I'm going to throw out 12 bold takes / predictions for how the Seahawks seasons will go. They'll be pretty random, just things that I found that I thought would be interesting, that I also think could realistically happen, could be true. Do they have some boldness to them? Yes. Do they have some optimism to them? Yes. But that's the purpose of a bold take. What's a bold take if it's not going to be fun? And that's boring takes. We're doing some bold takes. Now, some might say they sound pretty reasonable to me. That's not that bold at all. But others might look at it and be like, Candace, you're crazy. Well, we'll just see how you guys fall. But let's get started. Bold take number 1. Geno will start over 8.5 games. So if the over-under, if you're familiar at all with betting, the way over-unders work, you basically have to pick over that number or under that number for 8.5 starts. I want to go that Geno starts over 8.5 starts. I think he starts 9 games. That's my guess. Candace, 9 games. I know you guys all want to get mad, yell at me, right? A lot of people do not want to see Geno for 9 games. Some people don't even think he's going to start 4 games. And maybe that's true, but I say 9 games because, listen, Pete Carroll is stubborn. That's my logic. Pete Carroll is stubborn, and I think he will stand by Geno at least to the midpoint of the season. And I think he can make a change after the bye week if he's going to make a change. But Now, if Drew Lock plays really well in practice and Geno's struggling, maybe that changes things. But I just think that he's going to try to make adjustments and do whatever he can to, not make any changes on. And I still don't think Geno will start the whole season. That's not happening. But I think it's more likely that they split the year than that Geno gets pulled after 3 or 4 games. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear. That's not the fun bowl take that you guys get excited about. But, if you hate the idea of that, just think about it. College football started, and that just means a higher chance to get a CJ Stroud or a KJ Jefferson. It is currently Saturday today, and these guys are lighting it up today. So just think about the quarterback prospects that we could be getting by starting Geno for more than 9 games. Bold prediction number 2. Ken Walker III gets over 1,000 yards from scrimmage and is a finalist for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think this is reasonable, guys. Now, I know Ken Walker has a hernia issue right now, so he might miss some times. But that doesn't affect my take. I think he'll still be very effective, particularly because, at least from what I saw in the preseason, they seem to really lean on him in the past game. Maybe not preseason, but just from the mock games and what I heard coming out of camp and those practices, they were utilizing the passing ability of Ken Walker III. And it was working. It was very effective. I think that's something that they'll lean on, that Geno will lean on, that even Drew Lock will lean on. Some of those check down opportunities will be emphasized. And so I think that's, even when he comes back, because he'll be used in both the passing game and the running game, I feel he could still get 1,000 yards from scrimmage, especially in a 17-game season. So while that may sound bold, I don't think it's that bold. Well, Candace, how is he going to be a finalist for Offensive Rookie of the Year? Well, look at the quarterback class. I don't think it's going to be that strong, and I don't think a ton of guys are going to get opportunities. I think the best guy who has opportunity is probably Kenny Pickett. Depending on when they play him, he's going to be a top candidate. But I think it's anybody's game. I think a non-quarterback could easily win Offensive Rookie of the Year. George Pickens could win Offensive Rookie of the Year. So that's something that I think will happen. It's feasible. I'm not sure if he'll win it, especially given the time he's missed. I actually felt like he was going to win it before the injury, or that he could realistically win it. But now, I think he can be a finalist. I don't know if ultimately he'll be able to do enough to take it over the top and win that. But either way, I expect good things from Kenneth Walker III. Bold take number 3. The Seahawks will win over 7 games. Cue the laughs. Yeah, I know. A lot of people don't take this serious. A lot of people don't think there's any way that we're winning 7 games. But I'm going to break it down for you guys. Here's why I feel like the Seahawks can realistically win 7 games. And I've already talked about this a couple of times before. But I just feel the need to reiterate it because there's so much negative energy. Negative energy comes from everywhere. Seahawks going to win 2 games, 3 games. Seahawks going to win more games than that. Seahawks, I think, are going to win 7. Here are winnable games. I still think they lose to the Broncos. Sorry, not sorry. Week 2, they win against San Francisco. Week 3, win against Atlanta. Week 4, win against the Lions. Week 6, win against the Cardinals without DeAndre Hopkins. That's a winnable game. Week 8, against the Giants. Week 14, against the Panthers. And week 18 against the Jets. Now, Seahawks so not every one of these games are going to be easy games, but all of those games are winnable games. Even the divisional games. The San Francisco 49ers. Seahawks swept them last year, and they were a bad team. I think they can split this year. The Arizona Cardinals, to me, are overrated. I don't think that they're as good as people hype them to be. And I think they'll have a very inconsistent season, as always. I think they have more question marks on their roster than we do at some spots. Except the quarterback. So since they got the quarterback, then people don't pay attention to that. But if you look from roster, there's an argument, in my opinion, that can be made that the Seahawks have a more talented roster. That may sound crazy, but go look at tight end. Go look at I think our tight end room is deeper. I think our running back room is better. I think the defensive line is, outside of J.J. Watt, who they got? Really a lot of questions on defense, more than anything. D-Hop is gone. How does that affect Kyler? Yes, he has Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown isn't a real, scary threat, is he? Are the Seahawks fan base, are we really scared of Marquise Brown? I'm not. So, anyway, I'm going to just put it out there. That's a winnable game, in my opinion. I don't think every one of these games will be easy. I don't think any of these games really will be easy. But the Seahawks, if they execute, if they're disciplined, if they stay on schedule, they'll be fine. And I think they can win all these games. That's my take. You could feel differently. But let me know in the comments if you're listening on YouTube what you think it might be instead. And if you're tuning in via podcast, hit me up on Twitter at Ethos Seahawks. Let me know what you think. Now, moving on to take number 4. The Seahawks will have a top 12 defense. Now, I kind of want to say top 10. I got too scared. I got scared, y'all. I'm sorry. I got scared. I didn't want to sound crazy because I do think this is a new defensive scheme. Clint Hurt is a brand new defensive coordinator. And I'm just not sure about their ability to be a top 10 defense, but I think they can be top 12. That would be an incredible event, though, for the Seahawks. Here's how I think it can happen. Even though this is a new defensive system, they implemented the core and the concepts of this last year. Seahawks fans have already seen some returns and some dividends, and I don't think it'll look that dramatically different from the second half of last season, just to the naked eye. But I think they will be doing different things. The versatility, I think, will help. The fact that most teams don't really exactly know how the Seahawks are going to play this will help them, especially those early teams, teams that aren't as strong in the beginning of the year that the Seahawks play. That will help them in terms of getting defensive numbers. They're not playing a tough slate of quarterbacks there but before the bye week. Outside of Russell Wilson and am I missing anybody? Jameis Winston, I guess. This is not a tough sledding when it comes to the quarterbacks. There's Kyler Murray and Trey Lance is a question mark, but it's within reason that the Seahawks could not allow, a ton of points, get better on not allowing so many yards, just implementing the things that they started on building on last year and being able to catch teams by surprise. Now, they'd have to continue that, but defenses tend to get better throughout the season anyway, and they're tackling and everything else. And so once they face the harder teams, the LA Rams, the explosive teams, the Raiders, teams like that, my hope is they'll be more disciplined, more foundationally sound, really in the throes of things, and able to, keep those offenses from running rampant all over them to maintain their top 12 defensive status by the end of the year. Do I think it'll be easy? No, but it would be a huge, huge thing for the Seattle Seahawks, and really, I'm counting on it. Honestly, if this team is an at least top 15 in defense, then there's no way that they're winning 7 games. So a part of my whole, prediction thing is predicated on the defense being above average. That the scheme changes, that the personnel changes made, ultimately make this defense significantly better and at the very least significantly more consistent, not so up and down as it have been the past few years. Bold take number 5. Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas will both post a PFF grade at the end of the season higher than 80. Both of them will post a higher than 80 PFF grade. Now, if that happens, that means the Seahawks have 2 superstars at tackle. Honestly, because that would be phenomenal for any rookie to have over 80. That's dang near Pro Bowl level right there. If you got over 80 at PFF. Now, PFF does include penalties, so they'd have to do a great job of not allowing penalties, and that is yet to be seen. Now, realistically, I can see them somewhere between the 75 to 78 range. But let's just go bold, man. Let's just go over 80. That's how I feel about it. I think they may get close to that. I'm not sure if they'll meet those marks exactly, but I am confident in what these tackles can do. The question is, how much will penalties impact them? but these guys are blockers. Loving the pancakes I'm seeing from Abe Lucas. Loving the pass protection I'm seeing from Charles Cross and Abe Lucas. So just promising. They'll face some really tough competition, so it'll be really interesting to see as we go through the division, how that impacts them, if they're able to, find their footing in the middle of the game, or do they just get railroaded. That'll end up being a telling sign, but I'm excited about what these rookies can do, and I don't think it'll be the disaster that a lot of people think it will be. I think it'll have really challenging moments, and I think it'll look really bad for stretches, but I also think there'll be times when it looks amazing to make up for that. So that's take number 5. Take number 6. I think that Kobe Bryant, between the rookies, Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen, I think Kobe Bryant will have more starts, and I think he'll have more interceptions. Now, that's probably not that bold given his standing in the nickel cornerback race, but I don't know, because depending on Artie Burns' health, maybe Tariq Woolen ends up starting more games than initially thought. And I know some people do think Tariq Woolen will start games, but I just get the sense that Kobe is more the ball hawk guy. I think he's got more ball skills. So while I think Woolen, if he starts a decent amount, will get some interceptions here and there, I'm not sure that that'll be a focus to his game. I think Woolen will be focused more on the fundamental things and, more than making a play on the ball, because that's what Pete Carroll cares about. Making sure that he doesn't get beat over the top, making sure that he sticks to his man, making sure that he's using the right techniques, depending on what the wide receiver is doing and playing off of that appropriately. All of that stuff I think will take priority over interceptions, should I say. I just think Bryant's game is a little bit more polished, and he'll have more wiggle room, in addition to the fundamentals, to make plays on the ball. All right. Bold take number 7. Jamal Adams will have at least 7 sacks at the end of the year. Now, he didn't have any, if I'm not mistaken, last year. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm kind of going off memory here, but I'm pretty sure he did not have any sacks. Coming off of a year, or if he did, he had 2. Coming off of a year when he had 9.5. Broke the NFL record for the defensive back with most sacks. Now, I don't think he'll ever get back to that, because that was an abnormal, imbalanced, unhealthy approach that the Seahawks took in terms of how often they were blitzing Jamal Adams. You don't want to be dependent on that. They were trying to manufacture pressure. You want enough pressure from your front four, or, your edges in this case, to not have to depend on that so much. But I do think he'll be put in better position to be able to make sacks. I think he'll still be impactful. I think he'll have 7, especially when playing against some of those weaker teams like the Lions, Atlanta. I think Jamal Adams will feast. So 7 sacks is sort of my thinking, at least. I don't think he'll have any more than 9. I think that'd be skyrocket. But realistically, 7 to 8 is what I'm thinking. That's what I expect from him, man. That's what he does. And people can make fun of him for it, but he's talented at it. And if you're talented at it, you're skilled at something that's a unique skill that you can bring to the team, man, embrace it. That's how I feel about it. Embrace that. And I hope the Seahawks do that. This new scheme should allow for them to better position him. And I think it'll be a comeback year for Jamal Adams. I would love to see him at least get 1 or 2 interceptions to make that a more consistent thing as well. But I know that's not his game. I'm not counting on it, given the surgery he's had recently to fuse his fingers together, breaking his fingers earlier in the offseason. I'm not counting on the interceptions. I love 1, 2 at most. But if he can get 1 or 2 interceptions and have 7 sacks, man, that'd be an incredible year for me. I'm sure he's going to rack up in the tackles. I'm sure he's going to be impactful just by being so versatile. All of that is the Jamal Adams package, and that should be enough to get him a Pro Bowl, to be honest. So that is bold take number 7. We are more than halfway through our bold takes. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this little segment here. And I appreciate if you guys chime in, give your feedback, give your thoughts as we go. We are moving on to bold take number 8. And this one's pretty interesting. When it comes to the over or under on number of Pro Bowlers the Seattle Seahawks will have at the end of the year, Over under 3.5. I am taking the over. Yes, the Seahawks will have over 3.5 players in the Pro Bowl. I think it might be 4. So you already got 3 that you really hope off top. You hope DK, even though the Geno's and Lock situation, you hope that he's able to still get his production and make a Pro Bowl. So you got DK Metcalf, hopefully. You got Quandre Diggs, hopefully, playing his normal, in my opinion, all-pro level self. Jamal Adams making a comeback. That's 3 off top. So then you're thinking, who's the other person? Now, it'd be wonderful as Tyler Lockett, but I just don't think if DK is getting the production that he needs, that Tyler Lockett is also going to get 1,000-yard or, even close to be 1,000-yard receiver. I think he might get close, but I just don't think it'll be enough for him to get a Pro Bowl, especially at the wide receiver position where it's pretty packed in the conference. So I don't think it's likely going to be Tyler Lockett. It's going to be one wide receiver or the other, and I prefer it be DK. But I think Jordan Brooks has a really great shot at being in a Pro Bowl this year. I think he's that talented. I think he'll be put in a position. Now the question is, if they're lightening up the role of the linebacker, does that mean Jordan Brooks doesn't see the field as much altogether? Does that impact his snaps? Or does it just mean they're just going to go one linebacker and Jordan Brooks is still going to be able to rack up his stats by being on the field? They're just not going to need more, a lot of depth because it's only one linebacker on the field. I'm going for the latter here. That's what I'm hoping in that case. So I'm thinking Jordan Brooks. Now, Darrell Taylor does have a shot to be a Pro Bowler. People were hoping he could be the Pro Bowl level. I have questions based off what I saw from him in the preseason. He played a pretty good amount, and I just didn't see him finishing those rushes. He was disruptive in the backfield, yes, but he just didn't have the numbers that I think he need to show in the preseason to show that he can really have an impact. Not to say he's going to have a fall-off year. I anticipate him having close, 8 or 9 sacks. I think he'll improve from last year. I just don't think that it's going to be what people were hyping him up to be. I don't know if he's going to get to double digits. I'd love to see that, but I have questions about if he's really going to be able to do it because he couldn't consistently get to the quarterback in the preseason, and that was against, second, third stringers, backups. I don't know how that looks, in against, the first stringers, especially in a very, very tough NFC West. So that's my bold take on that. I think the Seahawks can do it. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But the NFC is just not that, packed of a conference, especially at certain positions. So I do think it's within reason that the Seahawks can have 4 pro bowlers this year. Bold take number 9. The Seahawks will upset at least 3 teams. Now, this is bold. This is bold. Most people don't think the Seahawks can upset anybody but themselves. So, I'm going out on a limb, but I'm counting 2 of them as division games. So, I think they could upset the 49ers. That will be an upset because the Seahawks will never be favored in those matchups. Will not be favored this year at all in those matchups. And the Cardinals, I think those are 2 right off the bat. But I'm going to go out on a limb in my swing. I talked about this before. I feel like it's possible that the Seahawks could beat the Saints. I am a pure minority in that thinking, and I understand it. The Saints have a good defense. But, maybe I'm just not as high on Jameis Winston as other people are. I know he's got a great arm. Yeah. But he can also give the ball away, and he's shown progress at that. But I still don't know what to think, especially coming off of that injury. I think it's possible. It's tough, but that's what I'm going to go with for my 3rd upset. That the Seahawks upset the Saints in Week 3. And besides, Pete Carroll is known to have, I expect him to have one extra game outside of the division that he beats an opponent that nobody really expected him to beat. That's just, the whole compete mantra, his culture. That's what he's about, and that's what he thrives in and he does well. I expect that to continue. So we're nearing the end here at our Bold Take segment. As we approach Bold Take number 10, I think that Derek Young will have more yards than D. Eskridge. It could be because of health. It could just be because of pure production. But I just really see the upside with Derek Young. I think Derek Young can play the same role as a D. Eskridge. In college, he was that gadgety guy. And I think they can use Derek Young for that in spells where Eskridge isn't available. And even though Derek Young isn't maybe as fast as D. Eskridge, or is universally thought of as talented, I just get the sense he'll be more effective. I like the kid's learning curve. He seems to be progressing in a variety of ways. And he played against some pretty low level competition in college. So maybe that's my lack of belief in Eskridge. Maybe it's the extent of my belief in Young. But that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. I'd like to be wrong. Would really love to see Eskridge step up and really be the wide receiver 3 that everybody hopes he can be. But I just have my doubts. And I think Derek Young could easily fill that void instead. Okay. Take number 11. Noah Fant will get over 500 yards, which would be the most yards any tight end has gotten in a Seattle Seahawks uniform since Jimmy Graham left. And, you may wonder, how is that possible? Gino's not going to throw that much. One, like I said, I anticipate Locke is going to get some run here. And Locke and Fant already have a good connection. For those, I think you'll see Fant's production increase even then. But even if you look in the preseason, the tight ends did get a pretty good run. They got, Will Dissly dropped the ball. Fant had that one we all remember. That play where Fant could have kept his feet in, but he chose not to. Gino's targeted Fant a few times. Got a defensive PI trying to target Fant the last time. So, I can just see them trying to go to him. And Fant seems to be pleased with his role. At least he's talked about it in interviews, that how the Seahawks plan to use him. So to me, that means it'll be more of an emphasis. I think that the whole tight end thing was really a result more of Russell Wilson than it was the scheme at any given point. And so with that said, I think we'll see some of the most production from Fant. I don't think he'll be able to outdo, Jimmy Graham or anything in terms of numbers that much, just because, the quarterback matters. So it's not only going to be so many throws to go around. But I do think Noah Fant will find ways to be productive more than anything, just because he seems to be a yards. I mean, he's a playmaker. He's a guy who can get the yards after catch. He doesn't need a ton of targets, I don't think, to be able to take advantage of teams. And early on, especially, I could see him getting going against maybe some of the weaker defenses, the Atlanta Falcons and things like that. See him really getting into a rhythm. All right, that was number 11, guys. My final bold take, 12 takes for the 12's. Is this: the Seahawks will not be last in the NFC West. What? The Seahawks won't be last? Yes, the Seahawks will not be last in the NFC West. I think it's the Cardinals, y'all. I think it's the Cardinals. I am not high on the Cardinals at all, as you can tell. Now, yeah, I'm acknowledging that's a bold take, but think about it. Kyler Murray has been abysmal without DeAndre Hopkins. He will not have DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 weeks. Another problem with Kyler Murray is that he tends to get hurt towards the end of seasons, which means he does not play nearly as effectively, and so his production drops down because of that. So just when he would get D-Hop back and probably get production back going, he might not even be healthy playing at 100% or even close to 100%. And affect his production that way. I mean, when he doesn't have the ability to run, he's not the same dude. He's not the same threat to defend. And so teams do defend it, and his production takes a dip because of it. So I see reasons why his production will take a dip in the first half of the season and the second half of the season. And this team is predicated on Kyler Murray. Make no mistake. This roster, while they've done things to make moves, I just don't see the elite level of talent that's there. Like I said, a lot of question marks. And if the Seahawks end up winning 7 games, that could easily tie for the last place, or it could easily at least put them in condition for, I think the Cardinals may just fall off. I could just see it. I mean, everybody thinks they're gonna have this winning record, and maybe they will. And it's a bold take, I'll admit it. But I could just see if the Seahawks can win enough games, take one from them in the division, maybe that flips that. Maybe it flips on its head. Seahawks end up in 3rd place instead of 4th place I'm not saying the Seahawks going to be ahead of the 49ers or the Rams or anything, but I'm just putting it out there and putting out this good energy into the universe and seeing what pulls us back. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. We'll come at the end of the year and we'll see what takes where Candace was right and where Candace was wrong. I understand a lot of these are bold takes, but we just having fun here, talking some football. That is it though, guys. That's all I have. I look forward to talking Hawks with you guys with official NFL football next week, as we'll be previewing the Broncos versus Seahawks Week 1 game. That is much anticipated. We'll have a special guest on, so be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at CandaceH901. And make sure to follow the show, as I've mentioned before, at Ethos Seahawks. That's it, guys. I'm out. And as always, go Hawks.